Sean Grayson is now a convicted murderer. Natasha Lopez is teaching Cherokee County, Georgia, a tough lesson. The Tennessee man jailed for a Facebook post was released the day our video dropped, and we have a double good cop of the week. All on this week's episode of The Rebuttal. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer, and this is The Rebuttal. This is our weekly show where we do many updates about stories that we've covered in the past, and we clarify questions that come up in the comment section after we post the videos. The first item on today's docket is the second-degree murder conviction of Sean Grayson for the killing of Sonia Massey in Springfield, Illinois. Now, this is exactly how I thought this case would ultimately pan out. I told you on last week's rebuttal that I genuinely believed there would be a conviction in this case, and I'm so glad that that is how it turned out. I did have a few people in the comments ask why the jury landed on the second-degree murder instead of first-degree, and I get it. It's not immediately intuitive. I'm going to save my full breakdown for after the sentencing in January because the judge's decision that day will tell us a lot more about his motives. But for now, here's how I see it. Generally speaking, you can get to first-degree murder in only two ways. Number one, the obvious, which is premeditation, or what the law calls malice aforethought. And then number two, you have what most states would refer to as the felony murder doctrine, and that is where someone dies during the commission of a felony, and that death becomes first-degree murder by operational law. Now, there are more ways to get to second-degree murder than first-degree murder, and a lot of times it's included as language of a lesser-included offense so that if the jury doesn't find first-degree murder, there's still a pathway for conviction. In order to get to second-degree murder, sometimes it's when someone intentionally kills another person in the heat of passion, but without premeditation. A lot of times we see that as the, I walked in on my wife with another man type thing, and I couldn't control my emotions, and this is what I did. Now, when you couple that walking in on your wife with going out to the car and getting a gun and coming back, that's where premeditation comes in. But if you're just in your house and you happen to be armed, or there's a gun or a knife close by, and it just happens, a lot of time that gets categorized as second-degree murder, heat of passion. Another way that you can get there is what the old common law language used to call a depraved heart murder. And that's when the person's conduct shows such a reckless indifference to human life that they are said to have a depraved heart. And basically, that's what I think was the situation with Sean Grayson, and I will explain a little bit further. But the third way that sometimes you can get there is where the person has an actual but unreasonable belief that they were justified in using deadly force. And I believe that that's what the jury ultimately landed on, but there's a little bit more nuance to it, so we'll go through and explain a little better. Now, I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to justify the verdict or anything like that. We have a system. It sucks. This is what we have. There's not much we can do about it. But my personal opinion is that Grayson is guilty of first-degree murder. I believe that is the case because when I see a police officer using more force than they're lawfully allowed to use, then I see that as the same as any other person who isn't cloaked with the protection of a badge. And in this case, it would be the commission of an aggravated assault. And when someone dies under any other circumstance in the commission of an aggravated assault, that's a felony. It's considered felony murder. And one of the comments that the prosecutor made in the course of trying to deliver this case to the jury is that if you send anyone else, Sonia Massey would be alive. And I would say, in response to that, yes, and if anyone else on the planet had committed this exact same offense, it would be first-degree murder, no question about it. But the fact is that people have a certain vision of what they think of law enforcement officers, good, bad, or indifferent, and that clouds judgment of jurors. A jury in the Midwest is going to struggle with labeling a cop as a felon in the same way they would if somebody just barged into your house and shot you. So imperfect self-defense became an easier pill to swallow for them. That was compounded by the fact that Massey did indisputably attempt to throw a pot of water in the direction of Grayson and Dawson Farley. Now, you can have your nuanced position on whether she was doing that to be offensive or defensive. I happen to think it was defensive, but that's not the point. She did it. It's undeniable. It's there. They had to consider it. Jurors are people. They do people things. This is what you get. I actually believe that this verdict is a hybrid, part depraved heart, part imperfect self-defense. And I say that because the depraved heart part comes from the way that I observed Grayson speak to Massey during the entirety of this call. He was impatient. He was irritated with her. He acted like she was an idiot. And that tone said to me that she was a burden to him from the moment that he walked in. His words and his body language showed me that he had no value for her life. And it was that utter lack of empathy, that cold sort of mechanical indifference that laid the groundwork in his depraved heart for everything that followed. In my view, it was the fact that he didn't see a human being in distress. He saw an obstacle. And I genuinely believe, as much as it hurts me to say, I really believe that he saw killing her as no different than swatting a fly out of his way. And that's what depraved indifference looks like in practice. It's not a momentary lapse. It's a mindset that leads you to believe that people are less than. And the truth is that is the line of demarcation between the justice system and the just us system, is that there are people that the police believe are worthy of saving, and then there are all the rest of us, and they're on the wrong team. And I really believe that's the way they look at it, a lot of them. And then when you layer the fact that you had imperfect self-defense claimed, and you combine that with the fact that she actually did throw the pot of water, it was futile, it was defensive, it was desperate, in my opinion, but that one act gave the jury the legal excuse they needed to downgrade what was really a cold-hearted killing into something that they could sleep at night over. And without the pot, I think they'd have called it what it was, which is first-degree murder. Now, a lot of people are going to point to Grayson saying, you know, I'm going to shoot you in the fucking face as proof of premeditation. But you have to remember that one of the most common ways that a lawyer can effectively disprove premeditation or prove a lack of premeditation is show that someone overreacted to a sudden stimulus. And so that statement kind of cuts both ways. Half of the jurors were likely to see that as him overreacting, and half of the jurors were likely to see it as him planning. You know, so 50-50, you would have never gotten to a unanimous verdict in that case. And if you understand what actually happened, you know that they're the ones who told her to remove the pot from the stove in the first place. She was not focused on that pot in any way whatsoever until they escalated the situation and started giving her unlawful commands inside her own home that she invited them into. And from everything I've seen, I believe she picked up that pot because she genuinely thought it might be the only thing that was going to protect her from being shot after Grayson drew the gun and told her he was going to shoot her. But once that act existed and it was on body cam and able to be slowed down for the jury to see, there was no way that they could ignore it. And this was a way that they came to a compromise. I'll reserve my full judgment for January. If the judge gives Grayson the maximum 20 years, I will take that as evidence that the judge included the second-degree instruction at the request of the defense attorney because he genuinely believed that the facts and the law warranted it. But if he goes light, the skeptic in me will wonder whether that instruction was a calculated off-ramp or a way for to give the jury a way to reach a conviction without fully holding him accountable. Either way, this verdict is the closest thing the Massey family is ever going to get to justice. It will not fill the void that is caused by the empty chair at every Thanksgiving for the rest of their lives, but it's at least an acknowledgement of what was taken from them. And for that, I sincerely hope the judge gives him every single day that the law allows. And I sincerely hope that they're able to get some closure and start to heal. On to the second item on today's docket, and that is the warrantless home invasion case that we covered out of Cherokee County, Georgia, and the victim, Natasha Lopez, who has awesomely refused to let this story die quietly. I was really happy to see that John Bryan decided to cover her case on his channel and feature her story. The last time I checked, his video had nearly 900,000 views, and that's going to make things a lot more uncomfortable for the folks over at Cherokee County who were hoping for a quiet cover-up. But let's be clear. There's no polite way to put this. They fucked up badly, and they're going to pay mightily for it. But the fight isn't over yet. They still haven't even formally accused her through Georgia's process of the obstruction that sent her to jail in the first place. And if you watch John's breakdown, he theorized that prosecutors might try to leverage her son or her son's girlfriend into plea deals to avoid a 1983 civil rights lawsuit. But here's the problem with that plan. they violated their rights in the process of charging them with crimes too. So now they're staring down multiple lawsuits from multiple plaintiffs, and the only play they really have is to throw money at the problem and drop the charges, fire Deputy Dipshit Mills, and pray that the public eventually forgets. But here's the kicker. The public can't forget because they keep stepping on their own dicks, because Cherokee County is also getting sued by a new plaintiff because they arrested her for a warrant that had nothing to do with her. There was a 49-year-old black woman named Nikki Sledge from Lithonia, Georgia. She was arrested by Cherokee County deputies on a warrant for a 43-year-old white woman named Nikki Sledge from Kentucky. The warrant itself identified the suspect as white and Nikki as black. She was at a movie theater with her grandson when the deputies came in, allegedly lured her outside by lying to her and telling her that someone had hit her car, and then took her into custody for a warrant that had nothing to do with her and was on its face for somebody else. She was held for 3 days, strip searched multiple times before they finally figured out that the warrant was for an entirely different person, younger, white, and from another state. And her attorney has announced plans to sue Cherokee County Sheriff's Office and the Board of Commissioners for wrongful arrest and false imprisonment. And so here's how you can know that Natasha Lopez has already taught them a very difficult lesson. Remember when this first blew up and we actually got to see it highlighted again in the video John released over the weekend, how the sheriff's office tried to manipulate the media to spin the story and cover for what Deputy Dipshit did, right? They came out and said, well, all these things, and it was completely inconsistent with what he even said in his report. Well, this time around, they've suddenly found themselves without a tongue and the ability to say anything, and they've found their professionalism and told reporters that they won't comment on pending litigation. So they're learning, they're capable, slowly, but they are learning, and they're learning while you're paying for it. So I hope the taxpayers can be satisfied with the fact that they're spending your money to train them on how to not be idiots. But anyway, we had an enormous role in Natasha's story being told. You guys were incredible. You helped her raise over $10,000 to hire an attorney. She has hired an attorney in Georgia who's working very hard to get her case dismissed. She shared some of that with me. I will update you when those criminal charges inevitably are dropped. And personally, I'd love to see the Institute for Justice take an interest in this case, because this fact pattern is tailor-made for landmark case law. And if there's any silver lining here, it's that people like Natasha Lopez are willing to stand up and fight so this doesn't happen to someone else. And awesomely, I was able to be the common thread and connect Natasha with our friend from Cobb County, Georgia, and that was Mick Patel. So they have now become friends, and they're going to work together to try to make sure that other people don't have to go through this stuff just because the cops are on an ego trip and they don't know how to do anything other than be right or cop-splain their way through everything. On to our next matter, and that is the case of Larry Bushart Jr., the Tennessee man who was jailed for more than 36 days on a $2 million bond because he posted a meme in a Facebook group. I'm not joking. And all the meme said was, seems relevant today. And he was talking about Donald Trump. Now, again, I don't agree with Mr. Bushart's minimizing the impact of Charlie Kirk's death. But the point is, the whole idea of free speech is that we have to tolerate speech that we don't agree with. That's how we get places. It's how we make change. It's how we learn to get along with each other. It's how bad ideas get weeded out and good ideas rise to the top. It is the tool that gives rise to this marketplace of ideas. You cannot have this marketplace of ideas if you're going to control the means of production intellectually and try to control what people say on the internet. This is not Europe. It's not Canada. It's not France. This is freaking America, where we say whatever we want. And as long as we don't harm anybody or actually threaten to harm anybody, we're okay with saying it, because that is the very fabric of what it means to be an American. Now, if you're not familiar with the story, Bushart, because there was a prolonging sort of mourning for Charlie Kirk, posted a meme in a Facebook group. And the meme was nothing more than a reminder that Donald Trump had said after a school shooting that we have to get over it. And all Bushart said was, this seems relevant today. Well, they took that and they twisted it into him saying that he was going to do something at a school, even though, again, there's no way to logically get there, okay? Trump had originally said something about some school shooting from a different Perry County, not in Tennessee, last summer. And somebody probably took his quote out of context, to be honest, and posted it, and it said, "We have to get over it." So Busshart was saying we have to get over it. In other words, we can't mourn Charlie Kirk's death for the rest of our life. That's what he was trying to say. Whether you agree or disagree is not the point. The point is, all he was trying to do was point out what he saw as the hypocrisy of the president and how he uses certain things when it's politically expedient and ignores them when it's not. And every politician does it, so it's not out of bounds. Criticizing the president is a fundamental right. But, of course, in back the blue, red state, Tennessee, we cannot have that sort of misalignment. And so the sheriff, Weems, decided that he was going to take this statement to mean that he was threatening mass violence on school property. It's literally just not there. But that's not the worst of it. He wrote a warrant for him, had somebody go arrest him, put him in jail. He was in jail for 36 days. And the General Sessions judge, even though these charges were completely bogus and had no relation to actual law, gave this guy a $2 million bond, and he sat in jail for 36 days, and the prosecutor fought for him to continue to be jailed on this charge and on this $2 million bond. We don't even give $2 million bonds for murder in Tennessee, guys. I'll drop a link in the description to the original video I did so you can go through and sort of understand the analysis with the actual charge of threatening mass violence on school property. But what happened, and the reason I'm talking about it, is right after our video dropped, I found out that he got released. And aside from letting you guys know who watched the video that he has now been released, I wanted to make sure that no one actually gave me credit for his release, because the truth of the matter is that he was actually released right before I published the video, and I was actually still editing it. I just didn't know he had been released, and somebody told me in the comments. And when I looked at the story, it was several hours before I even released the video. I'd love to take credit, but I don't need to take credit or want to take credit for what somebody else does. The real credit goes to the excellent journalism from the folks over at Nashville News Channel 5, because they're the ones who dug into this story and forced this nonsense into the light. And that's the reason that magically, right after the video dropped, he was released and all charges were dropped. But again, he does have this criminal charge that is now in need of being expunged, of threatening mass violence on school property, a completely bogus accusation. And I'm not done with this case. And my next video is going to dig into potential criminal exposure for the sheriff, including possible official oppression and official misconduct, as well as consequences for the prosecutor who fought for a $2 million bond and for this guy to be jailed on a charge that he knew lacked probable cause and lacked legal merit, as well as the General Session Judge, Katarina Moore, who gave this guy a $2 million bond and made him sit in jail for, he didn't even have a preliminary hearing that was scheduled until December, guys. He was supposed to sit another 60 days. So just keep in mind about that trajectory. You got a guy that nobody knew got arrested. Okay. And then the news dug it up. They started a Facebook group to try to get him out of jail. The news got a hold of it, dug it up. He had a hearing at the beginning of October after he'd been in jail for over 30 days, and they reaffirmed the $2 million bond, and he wasn't supposed to have a preliminary hearing for another 60 days. And then magically, this case that was so important that they needed a $2 million bond for, they were able to see that, oh my goodness, this lacks legal merit. We'll just drop it all together and release him with no consequences at all. I don't think so. We're not going to stop paying attention. We're not going to go away. So this is the beginning. Look for the full update video in the weeks to come. Now, it's time for the thing that you guys have all been waiting for, or, well, some of you have been waiting for, and some of you will fast forward through this, and that's okay, because it is time for Good Cop of the Week. And this week's honor is doubled, and it actually goes to Officer Spencer Lowe of the North Royalton, Ohio Police Department. First, he did what too many other police officers won't, and that is he arrested another cop. But not just any cop. This was the assistant chief of a neighboring police department named Patrick O'Callahan, and he was the assistant chief at Orange Village. He was stopped by Officer Lowe for driving more than 20 miles over the speed limit. He was obviously inebriated. It's on video. There were 3 loaded guns found in the vehicle during the search incident to arrest after the DUI, which made it a potential felony weapons charge under Ohio law. When most officers would have looked the other way for one of their own, Spencer Lowe did not do that. O'Callahan actually flashed his badge and tried to pull the professional courtesy card, but Lowe still charged him with DUI and did a proper investigation. And he filed his report. He did it factually. He played it straight. And that alone would have earned him probably Good Cop of the Week honors. But the story didn't end there, because sometime after the arrest, Lowe found out that his own department brass, the leaders of his own police department, including the chief of police, went into the system and allegedly edited his report and removed any mention of these guns, because a police officer can survive a DUI conviction. They can't survive a felony conviction and still be a police officer. So they went in, they altered the report, and took out any information about the guns to protect the neighboring department chief. So the double award for Good Cop of the Week goes to Spencer Lowe, because instead of just eating the loss and keeping quiet, he went out and he hired a lawyer and he filed a whistleblower complaint, and he sent it directly to the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, asking for an independent investigation into his own chief and into the assistant chief from the other department and the command staff for tampering with official records. So that's not just integrity, that is courage under what will ultimately be fire for him in his career as a law enforcement officer. And here's the part I love. It worked. The mayor of North Royalton, Ohio, the place where Spencer Lowe works, has now hired outside counsel to conduct an independent investigation into whether the report was altered to cover up a felony, all because one officer refused to toe the thin blue line. So, Officer Lowe, you get the double Good Cop of the Week honor, once for arresting a drunk cop who tried to abuse his badge, and again for refusing to let your own department bury the truth. That, my friends, is what integrity looks like in law enforcement, and we desperately need more of it. And if you ask me, every department in this country could use a few more Spencer Lowes within their ranks. Anyway, that's all for this week's rebuttal. I hope you guys got something from it. I'd like to invite you to check us out on all the socials. You can scan the QR code with your camera phone. That will take you to the YouTube channel, the Facebook, the TikTok, and the Substack. You can join on a paid tier of Substack if you want to, but that's only for people who want to support the channel monetarily. I don't put anything on these platforms that people have to pay for. If you don't want to follow us to other platforms, but you'd like to support monetarily, I'll leave my Venmo and PayPal links both here on the screen as well as in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video. Check out some of the other videos on the channel and leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.